My name is April Howard, and I'm excited to talk with you today about integrated mental health and how it relates to bereavement counseling within the school setting for elementary students that may be suffering with grief or loss of a deceased parent or parental figure. We'll start by answering the question, what is your why? And I'll be telling you a little bit of information about what my why is. We'll also take a look at where therapeutic journaling for bereavement counseling started. That's one technique I have found to be really helpful when working with elementary students. We'll take a look at what we can do as school counselors with this information. What exactly does therapeutic journaling look like and bereavement counseling look like within a school setting? And at the end of the presentation, we'll be able to answer the question, what do I do now that I know more about therapeutic journaling, specifically for bereavement counseling for elementary students? You're about to see a video that was created as a public service announcement to get the information out to the general public about bereavement counseling for students within a school setting. The statistics that you will see include information for students that have lost a parent, parental figure, and even a sibling. The rest of the presentation focuses more on students that have lost a parent or parental figure, but the statistics for those that have lost a sibling are also included within this video. That information that you're going to see, just a warning, is a little alarming. As a former teacher and as a current school counselor, the way that these students are impacted at school is astounding. They are known to have a higher rates of absenteeism, lower quality of work. A lot of them withdraw or show withdrawal symptoms within the classroom, socially and emotionally. And that is my reason for why I want to continue bridging the way that students are able to receive bereavement counseling within a school setting. And I think you may agree after you see the video.
I have unanswered prayers. I have trouble I wish wasn't there. And I have asked 1,000 ways that you would take my pain away. You would take my pain away. I am trying to understand how to walk this weary land. Make straight the paths that crooked lie. Oh Lord, before these feet of mine. Oh Lord, before these feet of mine. When my world is shaking, heaven stands. When my heart is breaking, I never
let's talk a little bit more about the facts that you were able to see throughout the public service announcement video. 3 of them are listed on the screen for you to see. I know one of those is the most alarming to me, is the one in the middle, the 1.5 million children that are living in a single parent home due to the death of one parent. That seems like a really high number to me, and it was one that really caught me off guard as I was researching and gathering information for this topic. And 1.5 million, that's a big number. And those children are in our schools. It is imperative as school counselors that we are able to reach those students. And even if we are not able to reach them within our own training, it's important that we have the information and resources to provide to them and to their families that they can use to seek out the help that they need. The other one that really got me was the top: 1 out of every 20 children aged 15 or younger will experience the death of one or both parents. For myself specifically, I have worked with students as a counselor that have experienced the death of one parent. In my former teaching career, I worked with students as a teacher that had experienced the death of both parents. And I will tell you from personal experience, it's very similar the way they cope with that, especially with the younger age group. Within the classroom, in my personal experience, I have seen all of these traits of students that have lost a parent or guardian. They do show higher rates of absenteeism, difficulty concentrating, decrease in their quality of work, less class participation, and less reliability in turning in assignments. And I think there's a variety of reasons of why that is. If you think about it, typically the children that have lost a parent or a guardian, they're either living with someone that is doing the best they can do on their own, being the mother or the father that has been left behind by the deceased spouse, or it may be that they have other living arrangements, that they're with grandparents or other family members. It may be that they are in foster care, in the process of adoption, just all sorts of things that could impact these stats. But regardless of where they're living or how they have moved on, these behaviors are exhibited by many, if not all, of those students. And as a classroom teacher, it's important to pick up on those behaviors and to also be a little understanding as to why those behaviors are there. So in that way, the teacher and the counselor can work together within the school setting and work out individual plans for those students. Something I found to be really helpful as a school counselor working with students that are suffering with grief and loss is therapeutic journaling. As a former teacher, I used journaling a lot, but never for therapy. It was always for work. However, the students that are in elementary school are very familiar with journaling, so it's something that is easy for them to cross over into their emotional and social life, as opposed to just using it in the classroom. So later in the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit more about therapeutic journaling and its success with grief counseling with elementary age students. As we shift our focus from the population of students that we're going to be working with to the actual technique we will be using, I wanted to give you a little bit of information about where therapeutic journaling came from. So journal therapy is really popular, and one of the reasons it's so popular today is because it can be adapted and used and tweaked so many ways to help different populations of clients with different topics or issues that they're having. We're going to be focusing today specifically with grief and loss, but therapeutic journaling has been known to help with anxiety, depression, stress. There is one article that has said that it has been helpful with clients that have eating disorders. It can be used with younger clients, older clients, adults. Really, it can be adapted and changed to meet the needs of any client. It got its start back in the 1960s when Dr. Ira Progoff, a psychologist, had been using it for a long time, for years, and decided to bring that method to light and shared the technique. And once it was shared, lots of other professionals were interested and wanted some more training and information. So workshops were started and trainings began. And from there, therapists have been using therapeutic journaling in their own practice, and they have adapted and tweaked and changed things along the way to help their clients create their own dialogue, express emotions, and reauthor the stories of their lives. A little bit later, I'll show you an example of something that I used, a way that I used therapeutic journaling with a second grade student that was able to do a couple of those things. So I'm anxious to show you that in just a little bit. As we dive into the technique of therapeutic journaling, there are a few questions that may rise in your mind. One, who is it for? So therapeutic journaling can be used with just about anybody. If you are able to have your client get their thoughts onto something tangible, whether it be a piece of paper with paper and pencil, an iPad, a computer, any way really. Originally, it started obviously with paper and pencil, but like I said, it can be adapted and changed and tweaked to meet the needs of specific clients. So it really can be used with younger students, older students, adults. You can use sentences, pictures, you can type it out. Really, any way you're getting that information from the client's brain and mind onto something tangible that they can actually see and touch. So really, it can be used with just about anybody. How does it work? It works because the client is able to actually see their thoughts on paper. And I think getting that information out is vital to the process of grieving, and other topics as well, but specifically today with grief and loss. We'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about getting the thoughts out and then using that as a springboard for conversation and getting and moving forward from there. Is it research or evidence-based? It is both. It is research and evidence-based. It's been around since the 1960s and really around before then, but brought to the general public around the 1960s and has been used since then. And what do I need to know in order to use therapeutic journaling in my practice? The great thing about therapeutic journaling is it's not difficult. Once you have gone through this short training and you've tried a few therapeutic journaling techniques with your own clients, I feel like you will be very successful with therapeutic journaling, and it's something that does not take a lot to get started. It's really used as a springboard for conversation. Once you get your client journaling, you're able to use that as a way to get them talking and then working through that process. I'm including some pros and cons of everyday practice with school counselors that are using therapeutic journaling. And one of the most popular reasons that it is used is because it's easily adapted. So that's definitely a pro. The students that are using this in an elementary setting are very familiar with journaling as they're doing it in their classroom as well for academic reasons. It's a springboard for conversation. Once those thoughts are on paper, the counselor and client are able to have conversations that they wouldn't have been able to have without having the thoughts right in front of them on paper. Some students are more willing to share information through journaling. They're not comfortable with talking in an actual session, but they're willing to write in their journal on their own and bring it back to the counselor to share ideas from there. And because of that, it can be used to document a client's growth. So if they are journaling at the first session or the second session, by the 8th or 10th session, you're able to go back and look at some of those original journals from the earlier sessions and document and understand the client's growth. And that's really powerful for the clients to be able to have a chance to go back and look at where they came from and where they are now. As with anything, there are always going to be some cons. For therapeutic journaling, cognitive development can be considered a con for some students. Some students are just not quite ready to journal their thoughts. They have a difficult time getting them from their mind to something tangible. So that could be an issue with some students. I personally have not found that to be an issue with many, if any of them, but it can be an issue. Making the journals manageable, it has to be something that the client's willing to do and is able to do and actually has the time to do. So that's something the client and counselor can work out in one of their sessions, is deciding how they're going to make the journals manageable. And as we said with a pro, some students are more willing to share information through journals. However, some clients are reluctant to share in journals. They get a little nervous about actually documenting their feelings, and that may be able to be fixed by a conversation, and it may be something that maybe journaling is just not right for some clients. And as a counselor, it's important that we understand and respect that. So those are just a few of the pros and cons that I have encountered as a school counselor and that I have found throughout my research. Now that we've had the opportunity to get a little background on therapeutic journaling, we've identified the population that we're going to be working with, those students that have experienced grief or loss, specifically of a parent or parental figure. We've had a chance to answer some of the frequently asked questions regarding therapeutic journaling, and we've taken a look at the pros and cons. So now that we have all that information, I'm ready to dive in and take a look at what this actually looks like within a school setting with school counselors. So my personal experience recently has been with elementary students that have experienced loss or grief, specifically with a parent. As we know, as school counselors, our population of students is very changeable. It can change at any minute due to students moving or moving in, moving out. But this year, most recently, I have worked with second graders and fourth graders that have experienced the loss of a parent. So one student in particular gave me permission to share a little bit of his story. He's a second grade student. He does have several cognitive delays, and I've worked with him for this past school year, and he has made some wonderful progress. I work closely with his parents, his mom and stepdad. His father is actually deceased, and if you were to ask the child what happened, it was a terrible accident with a gun. But it has been shared with me that that is not necessarily what happened, that there was, it was actually a suicide with that father. The child does not know this, and it is not my place to share that information. So we have worked from the standpoint of a child. The journal that you're looking at on the screen right now it belongs to him. It was one of his earlier journals, or at least the top portion was one of his earlier journals. When we first started, this client was having issues within the classroom. He would easily become distracted. It could be something very small. His dad was in the military, and we live in a military town. So we talk about the military a lot. At any time that conversation came up, the student had a really difficult time, would have emotional breakdowns in the classroom, behavior outbreaks in the classroom, and because of that, his academics began to slip as well. So it was a big problem for him personally, he felt the wrath of that. And then also for his classmates and his teacher, he just was not getting his work completed, having a really difficult time. So he was referred to me, and we started talking a little bit, and he would talk some at first. He definitely opened up throughout our sessions together. But I felt that journaling would be something very beneficial to him, because another perk of journaling is, as school counselors, we're pulled in lots of different directions. So one of our early interventions with this student was for him to come to my office and talk with me when he felt distracted, and we would kind of process what was going on, and then he would go back to the classroom. And that was successful when it was able to happen. But there are times that counselors are not in their office, they are in classrooms or with other clients. And this was a client that just he couldn't wait in that moment. He needed to decompose right then. So we decided to start journaling with him. And the teacher was a little hesitant at first because of the delays. Writing was not a strong point for him. And sometimes he even felt frustrated to write. So whenever it was introduced to this student, knowing that he had those delays and that writing was not a strong suit for him, we decided that it was important that I have a conversation with him that this journal is not for a grade. This really is just to get what you're feeling out. So we had lots of conversations about not focusing on spelling or punctuation for this specific journal. Now, the school journal is completely different, but for this one, it really, I was not looking for spelling or anything like that. So once he was able to get over that, he was able to journal successfully, and it was very successful for him. So we started by just getting his thoughts on paper, and he would come up and talk with me, and then he would go back to class. And from there, that's where we were able to use his journal as a springboard for conversation. So he would bring it up to my office, and we would talk, and then we were able to talk about sad things, happy things, and eventually we were able to use his journal entries as a way to kind of change his mindset about the life he's been given. So you'll notice in the top portion of the journal that you're looking at right now was a time that he was in the classroom and felt distracted, and he wrote about his dad making a promise that he would never die, and that but he went outside and he had a gun, and that mom said that that she would never break the promise. And he shared a lot more information that day, that he felt very betrayed by dad at that point, because his dad had made him this promise. So although it had been a little over a year since his dad had passed away, at this point he was going through the I'm getting angry stage, like I'm angry that he's not here. So he went through a little stage of that. From there, after he shared that information and he was able to get that out and we processed that, we moved on and flipped it to a journal stem, which I'll show you in just a few minutes. And I used the journal stem of what was the most fun thing that you did with your loved one. So the bottom piece of the journal, you'll see it talks about his dad playing Minecraft with him, and it was so much fun, and they used to like to play Minecraft. So he was able to take a negative day and flip it to something that was positive, to a positive memory. And that is the power of journaling. So as his journal went on, that's really, this was the beginning. So we moved on from here, and he would come and talk about, like I said, the negative thoughts or distracting thoughts, and we would flip it to either something positive or something that he could plan for the future. So that way he was not stuck in that loss and grief, that he was able to move on and use his own journal, his own power to get him there. These are the writing stems that I was just sharing with the previous slide. Like I said, with the student's journal that we just saw, his original journal post was a free thought, just what was in his head. And then eventually we were able to use that free thought for conversation and then flip it into something positive. So these are just a few of the grief journal writing stems that I have used that have been successful and have been a great conversation piece. On a slide later in the presentation, we'll have an opportunity to look at one of the websites where these writing stems came from. And I've also had students help me, like I've noticed what they have been writing in their journal and what thoughts they tend to need to get out to help them process. And we have used that as a writing stem as well. So some days I would let the students pick their own writing stem. If they were having a hard time and they weren't even sure what to write about, I had a bucket of these stems written on popsicle sticks, and they could just pull a popsicle stick out and write about that, kind of luck of the draw. And then there are other times as a counselor I would see, you know what, I noticed that he's writing about this and I feel like this would be a great writing stem for him. So there were other times that I would pick for the client. But we use these as a way to get positive feelings about things that were going on. And then there are some times that, you know, they really need to work through those sad and negative feelings. So we also used that as a way to get them to process through the negative feelings regarding grief and loss.
So where can I learn more? These are some of the websites that I used in my research in compiling information for this particular topic, and I found a lot of these to be really helpful. There's actually a ton more out there. I was actually able to find a lot of things on Pinterest, some wonderful writing stems, some ways to make it a little more fun or cute for the younger kids. But the original website I went to was actually journaltherapy.com. We'll go there now. And it had really good just background history information about journal therapy, where it came from, and resources. It was just a really good place to start. The website should be opening up here in just a minute. There we go. Okay. And as it's opening up, you will see it's going to take us directly to the home page. And here we are. This is where, like I said, I found a lot of my background information. There's wonderful, I'll scroll down so you can see wonderful resources here that you can research and use. I loved this tab as I was researching the Let's Journal. Lots of online newsletters that you can sign up for that were very helpful. And it was just something that I found to be helpful as a counselor and as someone that was working with students with grief and loss. Just wonderful things that you can see there. Okay, I'm going to close that one and go back to where we were. The next one we're going to take a look at is called My Good Grief Journal for Kids. And when I first saw it, I was thinking, what could that be? But after I opened it and saw it is actually an app that you can download on your iPad. And I think it's 99 cents. It's very cheap. It's not expensive at all. And it has some excellent resources for parents and for kids. It's really wonderful for those students that are not really interested in writing, but they're interested in technology, which is actually a lot of children these days. And it's something that they can use at school, they can use at home if they have the app. It's something that you could use on your own iPad in your office with clients. It could be something they come and use there. And it was another helpful tool, especially for the younger children. Okay. This is a school counselor's website that has some wonderful resources for grief counseling and bereavement. And I will show you They have some wonderful just techniques that you can use in your practice, but more specifically, towards the bottom of this, there is a wonderful resource for journaling that I really liked. It made it almost look um, like a poster rather than a journal. So there's some really great topics, um, or I'm sorry, really great techniques and questions that you can use when talking with children about death and dying, and that would be a great resource to share with parents, um, and with colleagues, with teachers. There are different types of death. It talks about that a lot, and that's a helpful thing to do. There's a lot of cultural awareness that goes around with death and dying that's important to understand and to be sensitive to when working with students and families. And this is just a great resource for that. Now, I was mostly interested in this. So this is a great way if you had a new student to enroll in your school, that maybe you don't have a lot of information about. It's a great way to start the journal or the journal process, because it's really the student talking about their own self. So it's not really about death or dying at this point. It really is just answering questions. Kids love to talk about themselves, and this is a great way for them to do that. So you can see my name is, I like to be called, the people in my family are. That one, I actually used that stem for one of my new students that came after Christmas break, and that was a really great starting point for our conversation when we talked about the people in her family. We'll go. Okay, this was another really helpful one. I actually used some of the stems in this box. It was a little bit too much for one of the students that I was working with to fill in all these boxes, but I was able to use several of the stems individually rather than using them all at the same time. So this is just a wonderful website. Has some great resources for bereavement and even for the journaling piece. I found it to be very helpful. The last resource that I've included is a book review of Julia Cook. She is one of my favorite authors as a school counselor to use. I love her books. And this one is for Grief is Like a Snowflake. So in the book, Grief is Like a Snowflake, um, there is the death of a close family member for one of the main characters, and the main character is a young child. He's portrayed as a little tree, and the author used that to symbolize the young child. So all of the older trees around him give him different coping skills, and it's very kid friendly. The title is one of the main analogies in the story, that grief is like a snowflake, and each snowflake is different, and everyone shows grief differently. I think that's an important reminder for students that are suffering from grief, as well as people that are working with those students in the classroom or in a school setting. Um, for one of the students that I worked with, particular the second grade boy that I was talking with, he was very much this way, that sometimes grief comes one flake at a time, and it's very manageable. You can handle it. And there are other times that it comes like a blizzard, that it is just, it's so much. Um, but then it melts away and then it comes back. So very wonderful analogy. And I know I learned a lot as a practitioner from reading the story. And then I also tried to read it from a kid's standpoint and learn from that way. And it was a great conversation piece for the students that I worked with. Um, it is intended for elementary age students, but it could possibly be be used with younger middle school students. And again, if you go back and think about your client, like their cognitive level, what stage of life are they in, and all those different questions, that it could be adapted for other students, but it's really geared towards elementary students. Um, Julia Cook has some really wonderful resources on her website, and there's actually even a workbook that goes with this. I have not personally used the workbook. I plan to, and I would love to, but did not have the opportunity to do it this year. But it's something I'm really interested in, and like I said, she's just a really wonderful children's author in general. And for this specifically, it was really an awesome book to use. Wonderful resource. We'll just close that back out. We're going to get right back into our presentation.
It is my hope that now that we have completed this presentation together, that you're able to answer the questions that are on this slide. You're welcome to answer them in your own mind, talk with a colleague about the answers to the questions, or even better, journal them. You can write the answers to these questions in a journal and let them be, your answers be a springboard for conversation with your colleagues or in your own self-reflection as a professional. What are some ways that students and children are affected by the loss of a parent or parental figure? Think about how those students are affected within the classroom. What are the benefits of therapeutic journaling? I hope that you've been able to see some of those benefits. I know that I have as a practitioner. What is one thing I can do to begin therapeutic journaling with my clients immediately? I'm hoping that therapeutic journaling is something that will feel easy and natural to you. I know it did for me, and I know it was really helpful for my clients. And what do I need to know more about in order to use this technique in my practice? To answer that question, I hope that you're able to use the links from the previous slide to get some more information, or maybe you have other resources that you may be willing to share with those around you. I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that it was helpful for you and that you'll be able to use therapeutic journaling in your own practice. Thank you.
The other things to consider when we are thinking about working with students that are suffering with grief and loss is that school counselors are not bereavement counselors, and it is important for us to use these techniques and learn these techniques to be a help to them. But one other big piece of the puzzle is reaching out and using our outside resources within our counties or local communities. And no matter where you are, it's really important to be aware of what resources are available, not only for yourself and understanding how you can use those in your school, but also as practitioners, we can share this information with families that may benefit. I personally, in my community, we are a part of a military community. We are very close to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, a very large military base. So we are very transient. And a lot of the families that come in, they may receive benefits from the military and counseling resources. They are available through the military. But some students are just not aware of that. And that is not the only reason we are a transient area. There are other people that are just moving in and out or to be closer with family after the loss of a loved one. And during that time, they really are truly just doing the best they can do with what they've been given. And if we can be kind of a shining light to them and give them the information or resources that they need and to build that bridge, that is something that will be beneficial to them long after they are a part of our relationships at school. So as counselors, we just need to be aware of that information. In my local community, there is not a strong support system for the students that are suffering from grief and loss. I have worked with our neighboring county and have pulled some resources for our school. But my plan and my hope, and I'm hoping that you can join this effort, is to make it a little bit easier for these students that have already been going through so much. Anything that we can do to help them, it may seem small or silly to us, but it may be huge to them. So anything we can do to help them is just wonderful. Again, I thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope that it is helpful, it has been helpful, and I really hope that you're able to use at least one small part of this component in your own personal practice.